by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. The start of a new year could mean dealing with the unknown, as today marks a pinnacle moment in COLSTRIP's long-standing power history.
Bright and early this morning, coal-fired power plant 1 shut down for good after parent company Talon Energy announced its 2 oldest units would retire in 2020.
And Unit 2 will follow suit in the next few days because Talon says the units are no longer economically viable.
Units 3 and 4 are set to run until at least 2027. As Q2's Andrea Lutz reports, those living in COLSTRIP are calling this a sad day while trying to stay optimistic.
For a town founded on coal, the sight of Unit 1 not running is hard to see. After all, this is where it all began.
Well, it's kind of a lost era. I mean, you know, it's been here for over 30 years.
COLSTRIP resident Leo Connor works at the Rosebud coal mine, so he sees firsthand the impact the closure has on the town he loves.
It's a very close-knit community, so I think with the plants going down, it's going to be a sad day.
Construction on the first 2 plants got underway in the mid-1970s, and it ushered in a new era for Montana's energy sector. The town of COLSTRIP boomed, and so did jobs.
And of course, it's very disappointing.
Mayor John Williams says perhaps the rest of Montana doesn't realize how important coal power is to our electricity grid.
Every city and town within the state of Montana is extremely dependent upon affordable, reliable electricity.
But decades later, COLSTRIP has struggled against pushes to increase investments in renewable energy in the Pacific Northwest, with rising competition from cheap and abundant natural gas.
Take a look at it, folks. Take a look at the value of benefit that we have received over these 45, 50 years of having that coal product being mined in our state.
John says it's very disappointing. Still, he says COLSTRIP will power on.
We'll move forward. We'll continue to do the good things that we do. That's been my attitude. I've been here a long time.
And on the day that Unit 1 shuts down for good, many in town have high hopes for the year 2020 and beyond. They're optimistic, saying that the end of an era is just another day in the long history of COLSTRIP powering Montana. In COLSTRIP, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Andrea.
Now, one of the biggest advocates fighting to keep COLSTRIP power up and running says January 4th, 2020 will go down as a dark day in Montana history.
Republican State Senator Dwayne Ankney calls this a prime example of how out-of-state and foreign dark money are destroying our communities and our families. He says coal does so much more than power our homes. Coal funds our public schools, infrastructure, parks, and libraries.
He goes on to say the coal severance tax generates irreplaceable revenue for these essential public services, unlike hobby projects like wind and solar, which produce no revenue for these services.
Well, Mayor Williams of COLSTRIP also spoke today about a transition fund in the amount of $10 million in which Puget Sound Energy, a co-owner of Units 1 and 2, will pay.
However, he says there is no plan yet for how those funds will be dispersed and where the money will go.
Well, we now know the name of a 72-year-old Billings woman allegedly killed by her husband before a reported car crash New Year's Eve.
Deputy Coroner Rich Hoffman says 72-year-old Celia Sheeing died of multiple blunt force injuries on Tuesday morning. Around 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, the Montana Highway Patrol responded to a fatal one-vehicle crash on Molt Road just west of town. Celia Sheeing was dead at the crash scene, and her husband Daniel Sheeing was injured.
Now, Billings police searched 927 9 Bark Street and arrested Daniel Sheeing on New Year's Day. Sheeing faces charges of deliberate homicide and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence.
Well, tonight, friends, family, volunteers, and authorities continue to search for a missing 16-year-old girl near Hardin. A missing endangered person advisory was issued for Selena Not Afraid last night. Not Afraid left her broken down vehicle at an I-90 rest stop and was seen walking toward a nearby field. She was wearing a black coat, gray sweater, blue jeans, and gray ankle boots. Bighorn County and the BIA set up a command post at the rest area. A person at the scene this morning told Q2 News that volunteers were searching late Wednesday night, well into the early morning hours. Now, her family stayed on site overnight. This morning, the search continued with helicopter, horses, and people on foot. There's still no word on how long the search may last.
Well, an update on a story that raised quite a few eyebrows around here. You may remember back in 2018 when Q2 and the Billings Gazette sued over the public's right to know to reveal the names of 3 officers who were disciplined for having sex with a clerk while on duty or on city property. Well, the Montana Supreme Court has now affirmed that the city of Billings must pay for the attorney's fees and court costs in this case. It comes after the city appealed a decision by the Yellowstone District Court from December of 2018 that ordered the city to pay Q2 and the Gazette a total of $10,052. The fight over releasing the names of Billings police officers Paul LaMantia and Matthew Edwards and Clint Anglin began in April of 2018. The 2 media organizations argued, and the court ruled that the officers occupy a position of public trust and therefore have no expectation of privacy in this case.
Now onto the weather scene tonight. KTVQ forecaster Bob McGuire blowing in from the Weather Center with a lot more wind in our forecast, Bob.
Yeah, good excuse for a bad hair day today. That's what I love about that. Well, show me right now, it's still a little on the breezy side, that area highlighted in red. That's where we had our highest winds this last hour. You notice here, Billings 29-mile-per-hour winds last hour. Up there by Jordan, 31. And over there by Glasgow, wind gust of 39 miles per hour. So, yeah, it's a little on the breezy side. We have a little cold from kind of pushing on through. But let me show you what's going to happen here tonight. If the darn thing would start in advance. There we go. We do have this, a high wind watch tonight for the Beartooth Mountains, and it goes all the way up towards Harlowton. Meanwhile, take a look at this. We also have a backcountry avalanche warning over there by Missoula, so some problems there because of all of the heavy snow. They've got a lot of unstable layers of snowpack in that region. And also, as we move back into our region, but the computer won't, I can tell you that we do have a high wind warning for the Rocky Mountain front. We're looking at maybe winds gusting to 90 miles per hour. That's right, 90 miles per hour. And then only that, across the rest of eastern Montana, by the time the weekend gets here, we're looking at winds gusting to about 60 miles per hour with a high wind watch, basically from east of the divide to just about everywhere else in eastern Montana. We'll have more about that coming up in just a few more minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob. Well, an afternoon of Montana snowmobiling turned deadly yesterday after an avalanche buried 3 men and killed 2 of them. Today, we learned more information about the victims and the search and rescue efforts trying to save them. Here's MTN's Katie Miller.
This has kind of shaken the foundation of what everything I thought I knew and believed in pertaining to avalanches.
Missoula Sheriff's Office Captain Bill Burt says the 3 snowmobilers that needed rescuing near Sealy Lake on Wednesday were all expert riders.
It's an area that slid that I wouldn't have expected to slide. I've been in there dozens of times over the past years.
Jade Green, 24, and Lowell Groswald, 26, of Anaconda were found dead near Lake Dinah after being swept in an avalanche. They were riding with another man who was able to free himself and call for help.
In both cases, they super good family structure, super good, just incredible, good people.
One victim was found buried under 4 feet of snow. The survivor located him within minutes using a beacon, but was unable to get him out.
He's looking for 2 of his friends, and he only has an idea of the location of one of them, so he's working pretty frantically through very difficult conditions, and even though it's only at 4 feet, that's an awful lot of snow to move, and it's heavy snow, and it's going to take a long time for just one person to do that.
The third rider did not have a beacon. He was buried under 9 feet of snow and was found with a probe.
It was the removal and of the equipment and the people that perished in this incident that was difficult.
Crews were working in high wind conditions and snowfall and eventually lost daylight. About a dozen search and rescue crew members from Sealy Swan and 10 from Missoula searched for the men. Missoula County SAR Chief Joe Blattner says crews are prepared to respond in an avalanche.
We train all the time for these types of calls. We're always on snowmobiles and skis in the wintertime, and we're taking avalanche awareness and avalanche safety type courses, and it's something that we keep up on because these types of calls do happen in our area.
In Missoula, Katie Miller, MTN News.
Thanks, Katie. And Captain Burt says the Sheriff's Office would not be able to safely complete rescue missions without the help of dedicated volunteers.
Montana health officials are telling tobacco retailers that they should comply with a new federal law raising the age to legally purchase tobacco to 21. President Donald Trump signed the new law on December 20th. That law appears to have taken effect the next day, but the news wasn't widely distributed until almost a week later. Montana's Department of Public Health and Human Services says federal compliance checks will occur under the new age requirement, and they're awaiting additional guidance from the Food and Drug Administration and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The law covers all forms of tobacco and tobacco-derived products, including e-cigarettes and smokeless tobacco.
Well, the 12 hours surrounding the new year kept Billings police very busy.
That's for sure. Police responded to 172 calls between 6 p.m. December 31st to 6 a.m. January 1st. Here's how those numbers break down. Police arrested 5 people for DUI.
There were 4 vehicle accidents, 33 reports of disturbances, and 34 complaints, ranging from suspicious activity to fireworks, and even a few reported assaults. And Billings police say alcohol was a factor in many of those calls.
Well, there's more news from across our state coming up tonight. We'll take a look at all of the top stories from east to west across the Treasure State on this Thursday, and we'll also tell you how long this wind will last in your statewide forecast. Join Jeanelle for that and more tonight at 9 on the CW.
But first, on tonight's 5:30 news, we dive into the numbers on parolees and probationers as we take a deeper look at corrections reform unfolding in Montana.
And in sports, Scott features a pair of Rocky basketball brothers, rivals now turned teammates for the Bears.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.